Well, this officially is the largest Zoom call that I've facilitated, and for some of you participated in. So welcome. Good afternoon, and welcome to what we're calling the convening of the inaugural Colorado Regenerative Recovery Coalition. For those of you I don't know, my name is Catherine Greener, and the reason I support this work as an Alliance board member and the coalition program lead is that after decades of work in sustainability and continuous improvement, I deeply feel that this work is probably the most important in my career. Together with Hunter Levins, we will be leading today's proceedings. And we're very grateful for the time and commitment for each of you that you've demonstrated to the state of Colorado and to creating a finer future. Our gathering today will be part inspiration, part education, and part planning as we prepare as a coalition to build an economic recovery, not on what we knew, but on the future that we want. But first, a little bit of housekeeping. We're using the nimbleness of Zoom for today's meeting, including the mute and spotlight functions. And due to the number of people on today's call, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to facilitate the festive conversations that we would have wanted with a lot of our friends and colleagues and new friends. But we do have several opportunities during the programming to interact. So feel free to introduce yourself into the chat function if you haven't done so already. And speaking of chat, we'll be using it for questions and for dialogue throughout the programming. So if you place your question into chat, Maura Wiederman, the Alliance Center's Director of Marketing and Communication, will be monitoring and will be able to present the questions. So the formal programming today is scheduled to conclude around 2:30. And due to the enthusiasm that we received from registrations, we are going to have breakout sessions at the end of the formal part of the meetings, and you can freely discuss the content, the next steps, and recommendations. And we strongly encourage you to join the conversation with the other coalition members. The Colorado Regenerative Recovery is a project of the Alliance Center with the founding purpose of bringing people together to solve problems, with climate change being the greatest challenge facing us today. But rather than hearing me tell you about the Alliance Center, here's a brief video covering what the Alliance Center is and how it works to create a sustainable and equitable future.
The Alliance Center is a building, community, living laboratory, co-working space, an event space, a nonprofit, and a network. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Alliance Center is this right here, constructed in 1908 in the heart of downtown Denver. We were founded with a simple purpose: to bring people together to solve problems. And let me tell you a little bit more about how we do that. We mobilize change agents through our event center, co-working space, and vast network. What's a change agent, you ask? Anyone working to make change, from community leaders to elected officials to people just like you. If you're here to learn, grow, and fight for what's right, you are a change agent. In fact, there are some pretty incredible ones right here at the Alliance. Our building is home to over 50 organizations that are our tenants, and they are some of the biggest leaders in the state, tackling some of the largest problems that we face.
The Alliance Center and our tenants have been responsible for over 230 legislative victories that have pushed key sustainability issues forward: environmental conservation, healthy communities, social justice, climate action.
Not to brag or anything.
So our green event space hosts events literally all the time. Over 450 events a year, so that's more than one a day.
Some years that can bring over 17,000 people through our doors.
Here's Governor Polis signing landmark legislation in our parking lot, plus the governor before him. Oh, and yeah, the one before him too. Here's all the people that wanted to be the next mayor of Denver, and then here's the winner.
We've had some really powerful leaders come here to connect to the sustainability community in Colorado.
Gubernatorial forums, mayoral forums, presidential candidates, climate action summit, climate plus social movements, and a whole lot more. We're adding video conferencing, the high quality audio conferencing, handling all the logistics for your event. You can really focus on the content and the outcome, no matter where you or your audience are.
But that's only the beginning. The Alliance Center is a nonprofit, bringing all of this together to accelerate solutions at the heart of environment, economy, and community. First is the living laboratory, and that's how we use our building as an incubator for innovation. Even though the building is over 100 years old, we're still one of the most energy efficient buildings in the state. How do we actually create the cleanest and greenest building?
We have a electric vehicle charging station.
We're working on building out a DC microgrid with the National Renewable Energy Lab.
We have solar panels that are on our roof, battery bank that's in our basement.
And you with your laptop and your cell phone plugging into the wall, and all of that's connected in one system.
This could completely alter the way that buildings tap into energy.
We're the highest LEED certified building in the entire state.
LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design.
It's one of the most robust certifications that a building can have to qualify its environmental performance.
We are at the highest level that is possible, platinum level.
We also have our Best for Colorado program that brings together hundreds of leaders from across the state in the business sector to leverage their power as a force for good. We're a thriving network of like-minded business leaders who know that business has purpose beyond just profit. This powerful community of businesses across Colorado has committed to action, and this network of over 200 different businesses is there to help all of us grow. One of the most important ways that we can drive change is through civic engagement and a strong democracy. So that's exactly what we do through our Climate Plus Democracy program. The Climate Plus Democracy program brings people together, whether it's through our Climate Bridges podcast or through our Regenerative Recovery Coalition. The idea is to give people other options to engage civically beyond voting. That's the Alliance Center. Community, network, laboratory, event space, co-working space, nonprofit. Together, we can make a sustainable and equitable future possible. Ready to learn more? Get involved? Take action. Visit thealliancecenter.org to join us.
Terrific, thank you. So Brenna could not join us today as she is still out on maternity leave. She's been blessed with bringing yet another change agent into this world. So we're living through an inflection point in history, really a confluence of crises. How we respond to this moment in time right now will determine the future of many generations to come. A gifted writer named Alex Steffen wrote a piece a few years ago that says it better than we can in what we're trying to do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hunter. You're on mute, Hunter.
So I am.
There we go.
We meet today to speak of great ancestors. Here in 2120, we may find it hard to believe.
Going back on mute. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's
Take two.
from the top.
We meet today to speak of great ancestors. Here in 2120, we may find it hard to believe that a century ago, many people actually believed there was nothing we could do to stave off the planetary crises we faced. Many had given up. Many did too little. Some even lived in denial of increasingly loud warnings from the world's scientists, or refused on ideological grounds to even consider change. Humanity made calamitous mistakes in the 20th and early 21st centuries, sometimes in the name of progress, but more often springing from inattention, ignorance, or simple greed. The losses were staggering. We live today surrounded by the legacy of those mistakes, that carelessness, the missing ice, the rising seas, the burning forests, the growing deserts, the toxic places, the tens of thousands of vanished plants and animals, the weather chaos we all experience, the conflicts over water and food and the refugees they've created. We've lost so much. We came far too close to losing everything. If things went on as they were, we might have. Instead, today we live on a healing planet. Yes, much has been lost, but much was saved or restored or reinvented. And what was saved and healed and made anew has become a powerful legacy. These gifts became the seedbeds from which sprouted our new world. That we have so much left from which to coax a long and bountiful tomorrow is no accident. These seeds of hope were planted, and tended to by people who made the decision that they would live as if the future mattered, as if nature mattered, as if we mattered. These were visionary people, responsible people, courageous people. All around the world, our ancestors took up the challenge of leaving a different, bolder legacy, not one of error and loss, but of leadership, stewardship, innovation. On every continent and in every sea, some of our most important wild places were made safe. Ecological restoration was begun. Species were saved. In the face of planetary catastrophe, the tide was turned. Regeneration has begun. Forests have once again begun to cover the earth. The oceans teem with renewed life. In every community, people and nature are being reconnected. We live again in a world of whales, tall trees, and awestruck children. Our prosperity has found its rightful role within that living planetary fabric. Our great cities, our global industries, our science and our inventiveness have all grown past their destructive adolescence. They've matured within the boundaries of our single small world. We've discovered, of course, that living within our limits has made us more inventive than when we believed there were no limits. Science, engineering, design, technology have all grown more creative when faced with constraints. We are richer now than we were then in every sense of wealth. Our cities have become the engines of a bright green prosperity. Our ancestors began by planning and building ecological cities for billions more people. That work made possible innovative leaps in development and transportation. It helped rebuild slums into great neighborhoods and develop entirely new districts that redefined the limits of urban ecology. Walkable neighborhoods, green buildings, and low carbon infrastructure have made our cities more livable. But they've also made our cities far lighter on the planet. Though more than 8 billion people now live in cities, their footprint is tiny compared to people a century ago. Our cities now, like cities then, depend on their interconnection with nature. Now, however, we recognize the value of the natural systems that support our lives, and we safeguard it. The rivers that give us our water have been protected and restored. On the farms that feed us, soil is conserved and biodiversity woven into fields and orchards. Well-tended forests give us wood and fiber. Wetlands guard our cities from rising waters. The world, of course, is powered wholly by clean energy. Near every city can be found long rows of wind turbines, blades spinning slowly in the breeze, or fields of solar panels glittering in the sun. Carbon dioxide, meanwhile, is being drawn back down out of the air as forests regrow and regenerative agriculture pulls carbon into our soil. The chemistry of the atmosphere is beginning very slowly to return to balance. We suffer tremendous disasters from climate change, but restoring our climate is beginning to feel less like a dream than a plan of action. Our common humanity and shared world has continued to inspire us to do better by one another and our own descendants. These are still tough times for many, and we must still struggle to make our societies rugged in the face of chaos and erosion. Yet we do not live in the apocalyptic hell many once seemed to think was our destiny. We have grappled with tremendous poverty, inequality, poor health, tyranny, failed states, ignorance, and despair. And if we haven't yet succeeded in making a world where everyone's basic needs are well met, the intent to do so no longer seems utopian. When you have met great challenges and won, you become less willing to accept the idea that some problems can never be overcome. Our ancestors gave us the early victories that today give us the strength to keep striving, for not just a better world, but a fairer one. If today in the 22nd century we live in an era of optimism and hope, it is because some of our ancestors in the dawn of the 21st lived in a time of clarity and commitment. When they understood the planetary crisis they faced, their answer was not cynicism or surrender, but to seek out others and together meet that crisis with action. When they rose in the morning, they put their hands to not only the common tasks of providing for their families and communities, but the exceptional work of honoring their kinship with those who would live in generations to come and laboring on our behalf to leave a bright green world. When they sat to eat together, they not only nourished their bodies, they nourished their connection to Earth itself, reminding themselves that humanity lives within this planet, not apart from it. When they dreamt of rain and forests, rivers and prairies, oceans and reefs, and farming and lives lived outdoors. They dreamt of stewardship and wonder and healing and discovery. They dreamt of humanity coming home again. When they took counsel together, they felt the hopes of their children's children's children keeping them company. They made ambitious plans. When they rose to speak, they spoke not for themselves, but for human possibility, the renewed bounty of life on Earth. They spoke for bold action. They got to work, knowing time was short. Where these ancestors gathered, heroes gathered. And when they departed, they had given us back our future.
Thank you, Hunter. That was really powerful. I pause. I have to gather myself a little bit. I've heard that a few times and it still leaves me a bit teary. We are those ancestors, and this is our work, and it starts today. When the COVID crisis hit, we knew that our work at the Alliance Center needed to pivot and adjust and not slow down. The pandemic exposed the flaws in our economy that worked well for some, but not for so many others. In April, the Alliance Center created the Colorado Emergence Series, which were 6 facilitated virtual meetings with individuals from all across Colorado to discuss ideas and address actions on how Colorado could learn and importantly emerge from this current crisis to rebuild with resilience in ways that ensure equity and prosperity for all. And it's good to see the familiar names and faces today for those who participated with us, and thank you. These sessions covered topics from climate change, food systems, renewable energy, agriculture, water, the actual food delivery systems, infrastructure of the natural environment, workforce development, and the role of democracy. And in each of the sessions, we discussed the impact and importance of equity as we move from the degenerative and inequitable old normal. The result of the Emergence Series was over 250 recommendations, many of them completely interconnected, as well as the fundamentals of a regenerative economy that you're going to hear from Hunter in just a little bit later. As we methodically, and I mean methodically, it's the mother of all spreadsheets, we sorted through all the recommendations, and there were key areas of emphasis, and it can be found in the final report, and I encourage you to read it. We have listed just a few of them here. And even reading these excerpts, you can clearly see the interconnection of them. Let's just pause for a second and take them in and digest it. And feel free to comment in the chat section which of these or others that might excite you. But that is why our work as a coalition is just beginning. And inspired by the successes of similar efforts in Europe, the Colorado Regenerative Recovery Coalition was formed. And there are so many tremendous efforts underway in our state. but we don't have time to waste. We don't have to do this work alone. We don't have to do it in siloed efforts, and we definitely don't need to reinvent the wheel. And through the power of working together, we can unravel the embedded systematic lack of access and equitable opportunity. So our mission together is to ensure a regenerative recovery right here in Colorado. So by convening, we will accelerate and amplify the work already underway, creating a sustainable and equitable economy. So where are we right now? So thank you for those of you today who've already joined the coalition. And if you haven't, it's very easy to sign up on our website. So as of this morning, we have 183 members committed to the coalition. Those are individuals, for-profit organizations, nonprofit organizations, and governmental agencies, representing, as you can see, over 19,000 Coloradans in the workforce, and approximately 2.4 billion, yes, that is a B and not a typo, of revenue managed. And as this is the inaugural convening, we're just getting going. The name of this coalition, though some will say there's a lot of words, has been chosen very, very carefully. But for many, the phrase regenerative recovery might be new, or it might mean many different things. So I'm going to turn it back over to Hunter, who will discuss in more detail what is a regenerative recovery. Hunter?
A regenerative recovery is a way out of the COVID crisis that we're in that builds robust, localized economies to meet human needs equitably and abundantly. It provides what we want: clean air, clean water, energy, food, all of the services that we need equitably. It rests on 8 fundamental operating system elements. We call these the gears. We are now in a degenerative system. If you can pop it back one, Kelby. This cartoon pretty aptly describes where we're headed if we don't get this right. And yet we can have the kind of world that we want to live in. We know how to do this. We just have to commit to it. This has been the work of the Alliance Center. It's been the work of Best for Colorado, of the companies that make a commitment that they are going to work for this. And this is the work of the Regenerative Coalition. These are the gears, the 8 fundamentals. Transition rapidly to renewable, distributed, reliable energy. The fossil-based system that we have all depended on has served us well. It has brought us to modern society, but it is also the cause of the climate crisis that threatens us. So it's urgent that we transition to the technologies that are already being favored in the market. Renewable energy is now everywhere on Earth cheaper than fossil energy. Couple that with efficient uses of energy, and we can decarbonize our economy even as early as 2030. I know that's faster than the government pledges the UN has said we have to do, but this is where the economics is already taking us. Second, strengthen and increase our regenerative food system. Regenerative agriculture is now bubbling up everywhere around the world. I keynoted a webinar last night to Australia, where regenerative agriculture is surging. It is the best way to provide the food that we need equitably in our communities where we live. It also is the other half of the solution to the climate crisis. It takes carbon from the air and puts it back in the soil, nourishing the soil, nourishing our bodies, nourishing our communities. Third, provide equitable access and opportunities. COVID is not treating us all equally. It falls disproportionately hard on communities of color, on the poor. This is just wrong. We must be founded on a commitment to remove systemic racism, systemic inequality, and ensuring that all voices are heard, that we have an authentic democracy, enabling everyone to participate in decision-making and providing the conditions for truly shared prosperity on a healthy planet. Next, build the industries and the workforce of the future. We're in the state, we are an entrepreneurial birthplace. We create niche markets, which then go on to sweep the nation. CBD is just one example of this. The shift to clean technology, arts and culture, regenerative agriculture, these are the job creation engines of the future. We have the opportunity to create an inclusive, resilient life for all. As we build forward from COVID, let's not return to the old normal. It didn't work. Let's build the industries of the future. We do this by investing in smart built infrastructure, but particularly in natural infrastructure. Roads, bridges, airports, rail lines, broadband power, sanitation, buildings. These are all critical to a vibrant economy. But even more important is the natural infrastructure, including intact ecosystems that provide our life support systems, air to breathe, water to drink, fertile soil to grow our food, climate stability. These underpin all life and thus all economic activity. My friend Ray Anderson, the great industrialist, once said, "What's the business case for ending life on Earth?" You cannot do business on a dead planet. Colorado's circular economy. This is based on reclaiming the raw materials that we've used to create the goods that we want, but we tend to throw it away. In the chat box just now is reference to the CPR story this morning. The Colorado's getting worse at recycling. If, on the other hand, we made a commitment to a circular economy, this would be a job creation engine, as it has been for North Carolina, South Carolina, and economies in Europe. Finally, perhaps most importantly, preserve and strengthen our democratic institutions. Colorado led the nation in showing that mail voting, postal voting works. And again, it worked. A regenerative recovery must strengthen these institutions, as well as revitalizing active and inclusive civic engagement. Again, we must overcome the systemic racism that cripples our economy, cripples our society, to build this robust, localized economy to meet human needs equitably and abundantly. Finally, partnerships. The coalition is a partnership. It is made up of organizations that have their own agendas, have their own commitments, but they're coming together to build a better Colorado in this time of crisis. The members are from every segment of society, and we need more. One of the tasks before us is to reach out to organizations that haven't yet heard of the Regenerative Recovery Coalition and invite them to be a part of this. To reach out to funders to ensure that the work that needs to be done by all of these organizations gets the funding that it requires to build this better Colorado. This coalition is in some ways a recognition of what is already happening. Even before COVID, Colorado was an economy in transition. We think of ourselves as an extractive industries state. We're not. Extractive industries have been declining year on year as industries like clean energy, IT, software, entrepreneurialism, arts and culture, and the 800-pound gorilla of the Colorado economy, outdoor industries, outdoor recreation, tourism. These are the industries of the future. I think it's time to recognize this and to make a commitment as a state that we are going to be the first regenerative state in the nation. We're not alone. The idea of the coalition came from a group, Partners for a Planetary Emergency, that was formed this spring in Europe to encourage the European community to live up to the commitment that it had made that a recovery would be a green recovery. And indeed, the lobbyists for the incumbent industries came in force and almost convinced the EU to back off their commitments. The Planetary Emergency Group held the line, and in the end, the EU committed 750 billion euro, a quarter of which is going to be spent on climate protection, to a green recovery. The city of Amsterdam has hired Kate Rayworth to implement donut economics. There are countries in Europe and places like Costa Rica, New Zealand, who are committing to well-being as opposed to GDP as their metric. We are part of a global movement to transform our economy to build back better. Companies are joining. Unilever, Danone, General Mills, Walmart. Walmart has committed to be a regenerative company. Now, I happen to know they have no earthly idea how to do this, but they are reaching out to put together coalitions of groups to figure it out, because they have recognized that this is in their business interest. Cargill, McDonald's, Target, more and more and more companies are committing to regenerative agriculture. General Mills has said they are going to work with farmers on 1 million acres to implement regenerative agriculture. Microsoft has said we are going to be not just carbon neutral, but carbon negative, soaking up all the carbon that our company has ever emitted using nature-based solutions and regenerative agriculture. $1 billion they're going to commit to this. So then Jeff Bezos turned around and said, well, I'll put in 10 billion. Now he has no earthly idea how to spend this, but groups here in Colorado like Med Agriculture and Savory Institute and others are working with these organizations to help them figure it out. This is happening. This is our future. Join us. We've laid out a framework. We don't have all the answers. You do. You and people that you know. Organizations here in Colorado. If we can't figure it out here in Colorado, I don't think anybody can. So let's make it happen.
Thank you, Hunter. We've been speaking for a while, and we want to do a quick pause here before we bring in our esteemed panelists. So we just want to open it up for a few questions and comments. And if you can put it into the chat, we'd like to hear what resonated, excited you, or what's going to move this forward, or even what is missing. There's been a couple of great dialogues going forward in the chat. So Maura's been able to monitor the chat. Maura, what is our first question or comment that you'd like to bring forward?
Sure. There were a few requests for people to access the report, and we shared that link. So hopefully people got it. Let us know if not. But I think one good question out of those requests was, could we share a little summary of the coalition's high-level goals?
Terrific. I'd like to answer. We actually have that coming later in the presentation. We actually spend a little bit of time on that. So whoever asked that terrific question, to be just a little bit patient, and we'll be able to go through that. Hunter, you're on mute too.
I know.
Oh, okay.
Perfect. We'll circle back to that one then.
All right.
There was just a question about what the coalition is doing specifically related to air work to improve air quality. Do we want to touch on that a little?
Sure. The real strength of the coalition will be in working with the groups that are its members to identify the specific actions that can be taken by any level of government, by companies, by individuals, and then ensuring that we can clear the barriers, that the incentives are right, that people have every reason to do this if it's an individual action, and that the legislation is put forward to enable this to happen. So, for example, the governor has put forth a climate roadmap. When the troublesome fire was burning, Jared said, "This is not good enough." And that's correct. When I read that roadmap, I thought, this is incremental business as usual. This is the way the economy is moving. We can do so much better. And Jared has now recognized that. So in that particular example of air quality, everything you want to do for air quality is what you would want to do to solve the climate crisis. Get the cars off the road. Ensure that we all have the ability to get electric vehicles, that there are charging stations everywhere. Jenna Sooks put in the chat box, rooftop solar. Shut the coal plants. Shut the gas plants. We know where the bad air is coming from. It is the burning of fossil fuels. It is the fires that will only get worse under climate change. So there are specific measures laid out in the governor's roadmap, but there's so much more that we can do, and we can do all of this faster. If we collectively take each of these items and push on them, bring this pressure of several $1 billion worth of Colorado revenues to bear on the politicians, you better believe they will move.
Thank you. We could probably have a lot more dialogue right now, but in the spirit of time, keep your questions coming. We will answer the questions. We're able to capture them, and we will send out a summary as well as contact you afterwards. With that, I'd probably like to move into the panel as our panelists are waiting.
We have the opportunity of a terrific group of people who have been members of the Emergence series, longtime advisors to this concept, and dear friends. And I'm going to start with Natriece Bryant because she has to leave us. Natriece just got promoted into the governor's office. And Natriece, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk a little bit about what you have been doing and what you now are going to be doing.
Thank you, Hunter. Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you all this afternoon after lunch. It's such a great opportunity to be able to touch base with you all. My current role is at the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, and I've been watching the chat just talking about the importance of local government involvement. I'm a Colorado native, and so I recognize the need so much to include all 64 of our counties, all 2,000 of our municipalities into the conversation, because this isn't a one-size-fits-all push. I think that from there, as we oversee some things in DOLA, what you'll see is some changes in transition through our Colorado Resiliency Office, which is focusing and partnering a lot with the Alliance Center as it relates to sustainability, resiliency, those types of things. So I encourage you all to continue to engage on those matters. My role is being transitioned. I am the Deputy Executive Director for the Department of Local Affairs. I will be moving over to the Governor's Office of Information Technology as the Deputy Chief Customer Officer. So what does that mean? That means a lot of different things. It means that I'll be working with all of our state agencies to ensure that technology is a primary focus for everything. As you all can see, there's 119 of us on this call, and we wouldn't be able to come together unless it was for technology. And so I think that looking at equity-based conversations, but also looking at the differences between the Western Slope, the Eastern Plains, Northern and mountainous Colorado, as well as the Front Range is also important. But then we also have to look at South Central Colorado, the San Luis Valley, things of that nature, to figure out what it means to really have equitable conversations and equal opportunities to the things that we need across the board. So I'm looking forward to partnering. I'm going to be a part of the coalition continuously in my new role, and so I look forward to engaging conversations with you all moving forward. Thank you, Hunter.
Natriece, thank you. We couldn't do it without you. Natriece has just been such a pillar that we have leaned on for advice on workforce development, on equity, on IT, and I am so thrilled you're going to be in this position. One of the suggestions, one of the ideas that came out of the Emergence series was ensuring that everyone in Colorado has broadband access. Boom, Natriece is going to make it happen. Mark, what's regenerative agriculture, and how can we ensure that here in Colorado, this becomes our future? You're muted. You and I have that same challenge.
Thank you, Hunter, and great comments so far. You know, I think regenerative ag is really going back to the way ag was done for centuries and centuries and centuries. It wasn't really until we got into the Green Revolution, which is really a misnomer, okay, out there, that we began changing into industrial agriculture, which actually became very extractive in the way it was being done, and it was with really no sense of responsibility to the land and which that they were extracting the food. And we ended up with a food system that was very, very much extractive. And today, agriculture is responsible for, you know, somewhere around 30% of all greenhouse gas emissions that we have out there. So really what we have to do is, truly, if I looked at this very simple, is we got to get this carbon that we're putting up there back underground again. And in doing that is where we are going to find really the solution for agriculture. So that's what regenerative ag, when you want to say it really simply, is taking that carbon, putting it underground, put it to use in growing those plants and providing the kind of nutrition and food that we need in the world out there. What I've been doing recently is I've started with a group of people, other people in our community, an organization called Flock. And we are working on 3 different initiatives. First is we're working on finding and funding and fostering transformative regenerative food and ag ventures. We're doing an accelerator with Techstars, and our hope is to identify thousands of regenerative ag and ventures and fund at least 30 new companies in the next 3 years. Secondly, we understand that we have to advance the knowledge base, the talent pool, the research, the certification and standards to promote widespread adoption of regenerative practice and values. We can't just say we're going to do it without putting all these things into place. So through our network, We're partnering together so that to increase awareness of regenerative models, to begin looking at promoting education, training, and regenerative organic certification. And the third thing we're doing is we can't do this without building consumer demand for regenerative products. The importance of this is that every individual makes a decision 3 times a day on whether they want to be supporting regenerative agriculture and regenerative foods, because they make a choice in what they eat. And so we have to be spending time in changing people's perception of how food and ag can be an important part of bringing about the world we want. And this will include things like advocacy, market insights, retail consortiums, research and awareness of regenerative products, and other types of technology. So that's one of the things that we're doing. There's a group of us here in Colorado and in the Western United States that's working on it. There's no doubt in the past that farmers and ranchers were for generations the stewards of all this agricultural land. But, you know, in some way we've lost our way in doing that, and we're not appreciating what we had out here. We didn't appreciate the depth of the topsoil that we had here that was left after over millennia and millennia and millennia. We've done a very good job of reducing that every year and putting it into our oceans and into our waterways. We've been taking chemicals that we learned from in the beginning of the 20th century could be made into increase fertility in our soils, but we neglected to look at what it took to produce that and what the negative implications of were that. We put agricultural chemicals up into our air. We put them into our soil. Today, every one of us has glyphosate in our bodies. It's pervasive everywhere. So we've produced the world that way, but we have a way of regenerating that, and that's through regenerative agriculture, regenerative food. And so really that's the kind of work that I'm doing. I think we've got a lot of infrastructure building we have to do. Colorado can certainly be the leader in that. We have organizations like Naturally Boulder, which represents 250 companies and 1,200 individuals that are working on these type of issues. So I have a lot of hope for us, and similar to what Hunter said, we have to put ourselves to work in doing this. This really has to be a priority in what we do. And fortunately, it's something that each of us can participate every day, very simply by making choices on the types of food that we purchase.
Mark, thank you. And I'm honored to be on the advisory board of Flock, and even more honored to be Mark's neighbor. We go for long walks when we can pry ourselves away from our computers. Our economy runs on business. And yet business in many ways is what has brought us to the troubles that we're facing. Kim, is there a way of doing business that isn't destructive in the way that the old business has been?
What a great question. Thank you very much, Hunter. And thank you for setting us up so beautifully with just an incredibly powerful vision. I was crying like Catherine. And Catherine and Ron Hunter, thank you for inviting me here. It's such a joy and a privilege to see this group of leaders. I look through the 100 or so folks on the list of people who are attending here, so many friends and allies, people I've worked with through the years, and you are the transformational leaders we need to create this regenerative recovery and a regenerative economy in Colorado. And I just want to say, before I answer your question directly, Hunter, that what you described as what's unique about Colorado, all of the incredible innovation and entrepreneurship that takes place here, the amazing industries that we have, from clean tech and renewable energy to outdoor rec and tourism, to the incredible thought leaders that we have on this call today that have produced the kind of report that is backboning this conversation today, to the visionary and progressive governor we have in Jared Polis, possibly the hardest working governor in the United States, who is willing to see the possibilities and to do what it takes with us in collaboration to make this vision a reality. And as a statewide diverse community, many of you I see on the call are from throughout the state of Colorado. We have what Wendell Berry talks about as deep affection for this place, for the soils, for the blue skies and the mountains. And, to reiterate what Hunter was saying earlier, we have all the right ingredients to be a demonstration case, a beacon for regenerative recovery for sure, and an equitable, regenerative, and impact-based economy long-term in Colorado. And I'm just thrilled to be with all of you in this conversation. The role of business is huge, and in fact, it cannot happen without businesses at the table. And one of the quotes in this fantastic Regenerative Recovery report said, when COVID-19 hit, the world of business as usual moved to the rearview mirror. And absolutely, business as usual is a thing of the past, but businesses and businesses of the future are essential in this recovery. And at the heart of that are businesses that embrace the notion that their business purpose is not only to generate private wealth for shareholders, but also to create higher quality jobs for Colorado citizens, to strengthen our communities, to protect the environment, to draw down carbon from the atmosphere. They are companies that are, yes, absolutely healthy, profitable, some of them growing, some of them stable. Wow, that's a radical concept, right? A company that doesn't have to grow, but is still healthy and profitable. But they're healthy and they're profitable because of their high road businesses, not despite it. And these are companies paying a living wage to their employees. They're offering career ladders and building robust corporate cultures that value inclusion and diversity. They're giving back to their local communities. They're managing their business and their product lines with deep green commitment to environmental stewardship. They are making radical commitments to decarbonizing their businesses. Many of them are employee owned or have profit sharing plans. And most of them are going to be and are powered by renewable energy. Business leaders have to realize the vital role that they must play in creating the vision that Hunter so beautifully painted for us at the beginning of this call. It can't happen without them, and they are uniquely culpable for the situation we find ourselves in. So what needs to backbone our economy from a business and private sector standpoint are leaning into fully embracing the very best business models out there, from ESOPs and employee-owned companies to co-ops to B Corps and public benefit corps. We have over 100 certified B Corps in the state of Colorado, one of the highest concentrations in the world. We have over 1,000 public benefit corps in Colorado, companies that have voluntarily for-profit companies that have voluntarily chosen to expand their fiduciary view to say, I'm going to take into consideration the full set of stakeholders when I make decisions, not just the shareholders. We have to set aside all of those old business models and fully embrace as a state these new business models, which will inevitably enable us to create that future. And business leaders on a micro version, it's one thing for us to show up here and talk about collective action around this, but business leaders have to embrace that every decision they make, every decision you make as a business leader impacts the future we're creating in Colorado for our children and for our state. How is your business leaning into regenerative principles and practices? What is the wage differential in your business? What's the highest paid and the lowest paid? Do you pay a living wage? How do you source how do you source your products? From where? From whom? How green is your distribution? What's your governance practices? Do you have an exec team and a board that's diverse? Are you transparent in how you operate? And on and on. We have the roadmaps. We know how to do business well, profitably, healthfully, and for the good of humanity and our biosphere. So I'd say, just to answer your question, that business has an incredibly vital role to play, and let's lean on each other. We're in this together.
The companies that have taken the time to be certified as a B Corp are in many ways the sharp point of the spear in crafting a new future for all of us. And one of the things each of us can do is find out who are those B corporations, B Corps, and make sure we do business with them. And then ask the companies that we do business with, why aren't you a B Corp? And you don't have to be a little company to become a B Corp. Unilever is trying to become a B Corp as a whole multinational. Danone has.
The largest certified B Corp in the world is in Colorado. It's Danone North America.
So this is, one pragmatic thing all of us can do. Mark said we all eat 3 times a day. Well, we also shop. How can our personal actions reflect the future that we want to see happen? Natriece, what do we do with workforce development? How do we ensure that everyone in Colorado has a fair shot at this?
Hunter, I'm so glad you asked that question. I'm ready for it. So in the pandemic, we know several things. And I think sometimes when we're talking about next steps, we dance around the topics of the fact that we know food services is one of the largest declining industries right now during a pandemic. We understand and we're well aware that we have seen job growth pre-recession in the Front Range. So Weld County, Larimer County, Adams, Arapahoe, Douglas, and also even in Chaffee County. We're aware of those things. We have access to all of that information. However, what do we do from there? So I think when we're looking at the types of industries in which we can grow, we know that there's certain areas that we have lacked in. When you have a pandemic that shuts down our businesses, to Kim's point, we're well aware of where things are. It's just how do we put these things into action? We have to refine regenerative recovery from a business standpoint, but also from a government standpoint. And so I think when we look at those things, we look at our community, we look at the organizations, we look at the businesses that we can partner with, and we come together as a whole, which is what I love about this coalition. It brings everybody together to have those conversations. But we have to be intentional about the things that we're doing. And I think a lot of times we want to bring in the right individuals, but we don't know where to start. And I think that that's a cop-out. I think we have to start engaging with each other. We have to develop our team. We have to do it through an equitable, inclusive, and diverse conversation. I think a lot of times companies will tell you, from a workforce perspective, I hired 13 minorities this week. Okay, but they're all at low-level standard positions that could potentially be considered essential and have to go out to work every single day, which then brings that illness that we currently sit in back to their homes, which puts them more at risk than we've ever seen before. So hiring diversity does not mean we're inclusive. Being inclusive means that we have a large scale of individuals throughout our organization that can speak to what the community needs are. I saw some comments in there about food deserts. It's important for us when we look at food deserts, it's great for us to say, yes, we're going to have agricultural opportunities. We're going to have fresh food, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. But if you live in a food desert and you have to go 6 miles before you get to your nearest grocery store, or if Walmart is the only opportunity or Save-A-Lot is the only opportunity for you to access that food, we're failing. And so if we are not looking at the development and the workforce that we've got, we are not doing our jobs. So we can look at our changes in economic growth, and I can tell you a couple of facts, and I'm just interested to see kind of people's reactions to this through the screens. From January to April, we know that the largest industry in which employment change shifted was accommodation and food services. We know that. We can look at that and see statistically through our demographic changes that that is the place in which we have lost the most jobs. We've also gained jobs in that industry for healthcare and social assistance. We know that because we know that more nurses are necessary. We know that our hospitals are at capacity. So we have to continue to push that because otherwise we won't make it through this pandemic. We're also well aware that arts and entertainment and recreation have suffered, but also have gained jobs back. So these impacts that we're starting to see, we have teleworking access, and people talk about the ability for us to telework. However, they forget that we don't all have access to broadband. We don't all have access to the internet. Sometimes we'll be on calls and can't actually connect, or we have to turn off our screens, and we can't engage the way we want to because our connectivity is so bad. If we don't start to look at that and start addressing that, then what we're going to do is start to see a change in the economy that we don't want to see. We need to look at the largest share of job loss in our lower wage areas. We need to look at how we're attracting workers to our state. And we need to also look at our population growth. Colorado has 5.3 million people in this state. We know that from census data. 2020 census just completed. So we'll have new boundaries drawn. We'll know where things are. And I think if we don't continue to look at the concentrated growth that we're seeing in this state, we're failing. So we need to look at also our aging impacts. It impacts everyone. It looks at our economy, our education, as well as our health equities. We need to increase diversity. We need to increase inclusion. And we also need to tackle some of the issues that we're seeing from the policy development side. You guys talked a little bit about recyclables. This week is Recyclables Week. But have we actually looked at that? Have we started to take that into consideration? We need to look at the policy changes that we have to make. We have to define our barriers, and that comes through stakeholder engagement. It comes through the conversations that Kim talked about, that Mark talked about, and we have to start doing those. Because if we don't, our stakeholder engagement process is going to be very narrowly focused, and it's not going to be inclusive of everybody across the state, which I can tell you is a big mistake. And finally, after we define those barriers, we need to track our measurements. It's okay for us to embrace the red. Sometimes we're not going to be gaining in certain areas. We have to embrace our failures and learn from them. And I think that part of that is looking at the workforce that we know we've lost jobs in food service, we've lost jobs in administrative portions, we've lost jobs in hotels. We need to address that and figure out how do we bring those workers back into our society so they're not on unemployment, because nobody can live off of that. So that's where I think we really need to actually push for our workforce development and actually bring people back into working economies. Thank you.
Y'all can see why I'm so thrilled Natriece is going to be in the governor's office. These are the sorts of granular answers that the coalition is going to be wrestling with. Precisely what is it we have to do? And who in which agency do we have to push on? What's holding it up? And having people like Natriece, like Kim, like Mark, as part of this, like all of you, will enable us to answer these questions. Let me open it up to the questions that have been coming in through the chat. Moira, you want to read some of these off to our panelists?
Sure, I apologize. I'm navigating screens. A question came in for Mark specifically. As an individual at home, how would you recommend I work toward regenerative agriculture for me and my family? And another one for Mark, if you want to talk about a couple of things, or how can we encourage and incentivize regenerative agriculture about the states? So very, very small level, and then the macro as well.
Muted.
Thank you. On the first question, fortunately, we have a lot of places in this state to be able to buy those things. Even the King Soopers and Safeway are actually doing a lot of good things with increasing the amount of products that they have. But, it really gets down to reading labels, folks, and understanding what those labels are telling you. And you have a lot of choices in every category of product when you're in stores. Take a little bit of time to find the ones that are produced locally, that there's younger companies, smaller companies. You can find a green little seal on it that says organic, which actually tells you that the farmers or the ranchers are following regenerative and organic practices in the producing of the food. So that's one thing you can do. I think on the other part of that is we have to become very much involved as citizens in this work. It's not for us talking heads to be, we're going to be able to talk to you about it, but this work has to be done by everybody out there. We have to make this, it needs to be taught in schools and so forth. I'm proud that we have the Colorado State University here, which is making significant changes in the types of agricultural practices that they're researching and they're teaching to students who are coming through there. We now have a sustainable livestock collaborative that was just started this year at CSU. We have a whole department on regenerative agriculture practices that is now has been established at CSU. These are the things that we have to bring about. This is where we have to begin that education and training. And kudos to Colorado State and I'm encouraged by what's going on with the National Western Project, because it's going to be able to take that knowledge and put it into an urban setting. Okay, so we reach much more of the population through that. So, I think there's a lot of really positive things going on in this state, but we're just at the beginning. Okay, organic and regenerative food is in the low single digits. Okay, as what's being produced. So we have a long ways to go here.
Laura.
Let's see, for Kim, a few questions came through. I'll ask a kind of a similar, the smaller level and the larger level. People asked, how can they know that they're easily know that they're doing business with a B Corp? I know you shared some resources as to how to find them, but is there a way that easily identifies a company as a B Corp as people are, doing their shopping and purchasing? And then there was also a question that came through about, can we develop legislation that incentivizes producers to transition to regenerative practices?
Yep, both great questions. So it's very easy on a package-based or a consumer products goods company to identify that they're a B Corp. You can go to the local supermarket, Wild Oats or Whole Foods or whatever, or even Target, and turn the package around and you'll see the B Corp, certified B Corp logo. Along with, oftentimes, these are companies that are forest, FSC certified and Rainforest Alliance and a lot of other things that they've kind of achieved to enable consumers to find them. You can also go to bcorporation.net and search in your, by zip code, by your city, to find out if there are any B corporations based there or wherever you might be traveling. Because oftentimes, as folks said in the chat, they are not consumer product goods companies. They are law firms like Moy White here in Denver, amazing companies that are service-based companies. And they might have it on their business card or their front window, but otherwise you wouldn't know it. So definitely look out for certified B corporations. The truth is there's a lot of companies out there doing good that aren't B corporations. It's a very long process. They're meant to be, B Corps are meant to show the way ahead, to be these beacon businesses that will draw businesses forward, to help them see the kinds of practices that would enable them to be good businesses. So look under the cover, look under the hood. When you start to determine whether your XYZ product is the company you want to buy from regularly, check out how they operate, see how they talk about their business, their employment practices, the way they build their products, the kind of reviews they've had from the outside on their public-facing website and in external reviews of that company. Know the companies you're buying from, whether that's the gasoline you're buying, hopefully not the gasoline you're charging with an electric plug-in, but to the clothes you wear, to the food you're buying. I mean, there are ways to determine, to make sure that you are aligning your purchases with your values. And to David's great question about passing incentives to reward companies that are taking the hard road to becoming certified B corporations, I love it. Let's talk to the governor and see how we can get it through the legislature.
Laura.
Let's see, there was a question that got quite a few here's. How can we include urban forests in city planning? Anyone want to speak to that?
Well, first we have to save the forests we have, the trees we currently have, take care of them, make sure that they're You know, I always cringe when I go down in urban centers and I see these trees and they're right next to the road and I know that they're suffering and they're not going to be there long. And I'm kind of going like, you know, we got to respect that. We've got to help folks understand what's going on with that. And I think, you know, if we could each plant a tree, each of us every year, okay, that would go a long ways towards making a difference out there.
Natriece, Mark, Kim, thank you so much for being with us today, but even more for your continued engagement with the Regenerative Recovery Coalition, for being my friends, and for all that you do for Colorado. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Catherine Greener.
Thank you so much, Hunter, and thank you, panelists, for an amazing conversation. As we were preparing for today's meeting, the flow of the agenda reminded me a little bit of a religious service. So, you know, you come to the point where after the sermon come the announcements. Well, that's a little bit what I feel like what I'm doing now with the next steps. It's important, but we just went through, you know, what I felt was pretty amazing. And thank you, all of you who have been posting links to join and collaborate, convene, and network. That is exactly what we intend the coalition to be part of. You know, to network, collaboration will be at our core. So earlier we shared the mission of the coalition. I said this was coming where we're going in our goals, and we're focusing on what we're calling our pillars of action, ways we're going to achieve our mission, and how we're going to focus on action, and together, what can we achieve? So the first we want to do through outreach and recruitment is through organization, speaking, writing, meeting change agents. We will continue to grow the coalition. We'll be working with media to support the work of our members, to help communicate key projects and success stories. As members help us as a coalition to highlight your story. Next, like today, we want to convene, and we put convene and execute together. It's about the action. But until it's safe to do so, we're going to leverage the ability to meet virtually. And I'll just pause right here while everyone's on and thank the amazing team at the Alliance Center who is behind the scenes, who have put this together. But by coming together, we can discuss and build ideas, approach solutions as a system, and remove the barriers to execution. We're planning on holding coalition meetings with a frequency and a cadence of once a quarter. And the working groups will launch formally after Thanksgiving. So as you're thinking about this, let us know which working group that you would like to be part of. The working groups, to begin, will be given the list of recommendations from the initial emergence work that were identified to help jumpstart the conversations and the rolling up of the sleeves. Next is educate. You know, I'm a Star Trek fan, and I always say that we're boldly going where no one has gone before. There is no map, there's no playbook, there's no guide that really exists for what we're trying to do. But we share the vision that it can be done. So through the coalition, we're going to provide the tools and resources to provide peer-to-peer education and member shared resources. We saw a lot of it today in the chat to accelerate and amplify our actions. We do not have to figure this out alone. Our website and pages to follow will help our members stay informed and share key information. And mobilize. We know that there is strength and power in numbers. It is not easy to reinvent everything, but by working as a coalition, we can help shape and support the policies that underpin a regenerative recovery and bring attention to the impediments to progress. We will be working with our members with the legislative expertise to share opportunities for each of us to get involved, pushing the measures to implement a regenerative recovery. We talked about a few of those today. So as we're getting near the end of our time together, you know, we opened with reflection from 100 years ago. And we want to close with a poem that reflects our actions from just 15 days ago, as read by Maggie Fox, who is a key contributor and mentor to the coalition. So Maggie, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, and we can see you too.
I often do what Mark Retzloff does, is forget to unmute, as he knows. This poem, not all poetry is magic for everyone. I do love it dearly, but this one I think might even light the candle of those of you who don't wake up in the morning think about poetry as a way of expressing ideas in an economy of language. This one is aptly called Election. I voted. I voted for the rainbow. I voted for the cry of a loon. I voted for my grandfather's bones that feed beetles now. I voted for a singing brook that sparkles under a North Dakota bean field. I voted for salty air through which the whimbrel flies south along the shores of 2 continents. I voted for melting snow that returns to the wellspring of darkness where the sky is born from the earth. I voted for demonic mushrooms in the loam and the oldest democracy of worms. I voted for the wordless treaty that cannot be broken by white men or brown, because it is made of star semen, thistle sap, hieroglyphs of the weevil and prairie oak. I voted for the local, the small, the brim that does not spill over, the abolition of waste, the luxury of enough. I voted for the commonwealth of the ancient forest, a larva for every beak, a wing-tinted flower for every moth's disguise, a well-fed mammal's corpse for every colony of maggots. I voted for open borders between death and birth. I voted on the ballot of a fallen leaf of sycamore that cannot be erased, for it becomes the dust and rain, and then a tree again. I voted for more fallow time to cultivate wildflowers, more recess in schools to cultivate play, more leisure, tax-free, more space between days. I voted to increase the profit of evening silence and the price of a thrush song. I voted for 10 million stars in your next inhalation.
Thank you so much, Maggie.
Thank you.
Our choices, our decisions, and our actions will honor those who've been impacted by COVID, so this crisis does not go to waste. We can break the old habits of an economic system based on degenerative practices. Our people, our geography, professions, our industries, and culture are very different across the state. Yet we share a desire to build an economy for Colorado that works and is an example for others. We will emerge from this time in between. Our task now, by working together, is to create an economy of equity and inclusion, diversity, and shared prosperity on a healthy planet. We know that this imperfect journey is not impossible. It just hasn't happened yet. Thank you. Thank you all who participated. We look forward to working with you to building Colorado forward. So with that, if there's any other thoughts, that concludes our formal programming today. And we hope that you can join us in the conversations afterwards. We're going to invite you to participate in facilitated breakout rooms, and you're going to be assigned, if you just stay on the call, by Zoom magic, you're going to be moved into a facilitated breakout room where you're going to be invited to explore different conversations and conversations about what about the regenerative recovery mission that's important to you. Why did you come here today? Why did you want to be involved? We encourage you to put into the chat group if there is a breakout group, a working group in the future that you want to be part of. We'll keep track of that. And interested in moving forward. And you're going to have a chance to also talk about that, which working group that you want to be part of in the breakout rooms, and we're going to be able to keep track of that. So with that, I have deep gratitude for all of you doing this work, and I look forward to working with you.
In particular, gratitude to the staff of the Alliance Center, which has made all of this possible. We, Catherine and I could not have done this without the marvelous team that has made all of this Zoom magic work and helped us make the slides and handle all of the logistics. So the Alliance Center is truly a Colorado gem. And this work will continue. It is core to what the Alliance Center is doing. Many of you have asked, how do you sign up? There are 3 or 4 ways. 1, put it in the chat. The chat is being saved. It'll be part of this record. 2, it will appear on the website of the Regenerative Recovery Coalition. 3, come to the facilitated group and tell your facilitator which group you want to be in. Now, if you don't know yet, that's fine. As I said, it will go up on the website. If you want to be in all of them, wow, wonderful. We need the energy, we need the intelligence that each one of you brings. And we need your friends and neighbors and colleagues and organizations. If you're part of an organization that hasn't yet joined the coalition, please join us. And with that, let's hop to the Zoom world.